and I'm standing in the food paddock to plate shed at Casino, where it's Primex 2021, and a great event and people coming in, and we're here as taking part not just in Primex 2021 but also about cooperative farming, and we'll be looking at the issue of cooperative farming and why people are interested in co-ops. And we're going to learn more about not just co-ops and the traditional co-ops of being primary production, but how co-ops help in insurance in farming, how they help in developing the skills of workers. And this is a situation that is very dear to my heart, because having spent a long time in mainstream media, in journalism, and the main areas I've covered is international trade and primary production. And I've been lucky enough to cover a lot of primary production in this region, where in fact a number of the oldest and most successful co-ops are in operation. So to be able to come back and be part of a production and an event which, as we know, like everything else, we've had drought, bushfire, flood and COVID. This time last year there was no event here like many other rural areas. There was no shows, there was no Primex 2020, so Primex 2021 has taken on much more importance. And as I say, we're looking at the Primex 2021 and co-ops and why cooperatives. The person that is standing on my left, she's very cooperative in fact, is Melina Morrison, and Melina is the CEO of Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. I had to read that to make sure that I got it correct, because Melina, it is a mouthful, and I love the phrase, and I'm old enough to be able to remember, let's go down to the local co-op.
That's right. It's a long title for an organisation for quite a simple idea though. We all know the co-op. The co-op is the member-owned business, not the shareholder business, and it's the same in farming. So it's just great to be celebrating this new way of doing business on an old business model.
And actually, we talk about the old business model, it's really evolving. Co-ops, as I mentioned there a short time ago, insurance, banking, building up the skills. And a lot of people don't realise that actually mutuals are co-op banks, and that a lot of people haven't realised that they've actually probably been a member of a co-op.
Yep.
And we're seeing that now.
8 in 10 Australians, Michael, are members of at least one cooperatively owned business. And that's either a credit union, your mutual bank, maybe it's your health insurer. You could be buying your milk from Norco or Devondale Cheese, or perhaps you are a member of a motoring club. They're co-ops as well.
And talking about co-ops, throughout today's program, for the next 90 or so minutes, people will be able to actually take part. If they've got a question that comes up, because we're talking to people who are involved in seafood,
Yep.
very dear to my heart.
Yes.
We've got the seafood, we've got macadamias, we've got the two biggest co-ops in this area and two of the largest in the country,
Yep.
dairy and processing of beef. So we've got all of that, but if there is questions, people can either go to the hotline, not necessarily right now.
No,
and,
not today, but
no,
Monday.
And they can dial in on 1300 665 174. That's 1300 665 174. But throughout the program, if there's a question they want, how can they actually take part?
So it's great to think of all those people out there across Australia who are joining us through the live stream, through YouTube. There's a chat box. Please use the chat box. Send us your questions and comments, and we'll come back to it later and hopefully have a chat with you live streamed across the nation.
Melina, you actually travel around the country a lot,
Yep.
talking to co-ops. Why, when you're talking to them, why are they showing an interest?
I think a lot of people, it's not just COVID, it's the trials and tribulations of trying to sustain a family farming business or a small business in any area of the economy, where you need to be able to get scale in a market. You need to be able to have buy-in to a supply chain. You need to be able to cut out the middle guy. You need to be able to get into export markets. If you want to stay independent as a family or independent small or medium enterprise, at your own farm gate level, but you need to get scale, then a great way to do that is to collaborate through a cooperative. It brings the expertise of the small business owners together with other business owners to scale, so that you can actually operate like a larger entity but keep your own independence. It's a great way of surviving and thriving in our very, very competitive market economy, and particularly in times of crisis. It might be climate crisis, it might be COVID crisis. We really need to cooperate. That's what we're talking about now.
And we're going to be looking more and more at the involvement of in casino. We're here in the paddock to plate pavilion, and we'll come back to this. Is it also buying local that's stirring that interest?
Oh, absolutely. This is really about Australians recognising food provenance is so important. Tracing back to the farm level, really knowing this is 100% Australian produced, farmer-owned produce, and also food security. We really want to know that we can, in times of crisis, produce the bread and the butter and the milk that we need, the meat, put the meat on the table. So knowing that things are 100% farmer-owned is really important.
So we'll be finding out more, and people can actually jump on.
Yep.
But wandering around the area here at Casino, Primex 2021, it's been really interesting. There's incredible optimism at the moment, and that was being shown by all the people that we talked to.
Primex is a big thing, like with the farming, and we usually come every year.
I love coming to this field day in particular. It's got a really good feel to it.
I think a lot of the people who come here, the farmers, like to touch and smell their machinery. They're not totally digital people.
Just come out, just have a look around and see what's about.
Well, I've come here looking for stockyards and water tanks.
Machinery and stuff for the farm, because we just need like tractors and quad bikes and all that.
Great to be back, it really is. Last year was such a strange year. I'm just really pleased to be back. Pleased to be talking to people and see happy people too.
Good to be back, isn't it? Back on track, and yeah, it's a nice day for it.
Look, I can't tell you just how important it is that we're back here at Primex.
Yay! Let's go.
And it's great to see it back. All these things are so important to our rural economy and for the rural towns.
People really miss that interaction and fellowship that goes along with these big events.
I think it's very important. Very important. Gets the guys out off farm, seeing what the other industries are doing.
Well, everybody's here, and we've just now opened and finished our last bag of sausages, and you know the steak's just ongoing, sandwiches, scones, all of that.
I'm Michael Kavanagh, and here at Primex 2021, and we're talking co-ops, and as you can see out of that montage of the different people, whether they be farmers, machinery dealers, and also inevitably at something like this, the Country Women's Association providing great afternoon teas and lunches. There's that incredible feeling of optimism, and we'll be talking to different producers, and some of the beef looking very, very good indeed. We'll be talking seafood. Unfortunately, we won't be having some fresh fish right in front of us being caught like we had the cattle on display. But with everything such as COVID, drought, bushfire and flood, one person who's very heavily involved in Primex 2021, and we were meant to be here 12 months ago. I've been here doing outside broadcasts over the years for the ABC and that life. But the last 12 months, there was no Primex. Well, this time there is. It's Primex 2021. The person that's got a big smile on his face is the bloke behind the Primex 2021 here at Casino, is Bruce Wright. Bruce, I made the comment before we came on air that you wouldn't have been feeling this way 12 months ago. You actually said, I think you said, was it 17 weeks ago?
12 weeks ago, we knew that we got the green light to have a crack, and that was after 2 attempts to get it up and going, obviously, last year. I think we were one of about 3 field days as far as the AAFDA went that were within weeks of going ahead when we got shut down, basically, yeah.
Righto, that wasn't that far away. Were you thinking it's not going to happen again?
There's certainly be some highs and lows as an event organiser. You know, when we automatically knew that we couldn't go ahead in May last year, it was a case of, all right, well, let's set a new date in September. And that was the next focus was, okay, this thing couldn't last for 6 months, surely. So we will just reset, move forward on that. And then obviously through the July period and what happened in Victoria and that sort of thing, it had a major effect on the whole nation. So that's when we had to sort of just circle the wagons and go, okay, where are we going to go from here? And then obviously working a lot with all levels of government. We've really gone out of our way to be collaborative, so it works really well when we're talking about cooperative circumstances. And when we got into January, it was a case of, all right, let's see where we can go. And in February, we started seeing light that there might have been a chance.
Given the history of Primex and the fact that there was still that doubt, you've got that history behind you. That must have been, because it's quite a rich history for the sort of event it is. It's not just your average field day, is it?
No, I think we're very special in a lot of ways, but the diversity of primary production in our region is something that we're very proud to be able to help showcase. And as you mentioned, whether it be Northern Cooperative or Norco and that sort of thing, to have them here, that collaboration and that real team feel in the region, I think can only get stronger and better, and we're just very happy and pleased to be a part of that.
Well, you've had people coming to Primex as exhibitors, participants for a number of years. With the 12-month postponement, did it worry you that those people, given the drought, flood and bushfires, and we can not be flippant, but you can look back in the past and say, well, geez, we weathered all of that. Was there the concern that they may not come back?
Well, I think we were very proactive in staying in contact with them, even though we knew we weren't sure when the next time would be. And I think that was some feedback we had, was like, okay, we will be there one day as soon as we can. You look around the exhibitors that are here today, and we send our sincere thanks out to them for their support. And we've got more sponsors and partners on board for the event this year than we've ever had. So that feel of getting out, being a part of it, and really saying, all right, well, under a new regime of what the regulations and all that sort of thing are, we're ready to get out and start trying to have what they call, I guess, the new normal. But the crowds today and everything else have been absolutely fantastic. And we really appreciate everyone's support to do this how we've been able to.
Yeah, I was talking to a Limousin breeder, and it was his first time. Are you also noticing you've got more people that haven't been involved before, and even if they're not taking part, they're wanting to know more about it?
Yes, so we ended up just short of 300 exhibitors here, and yeah, probably around about 30% are new ones. We know that there's a lot that are also concerned about things still like crossing borders and all that sort of stuff. So we're hoping that this next 12 months leading into the end of 2021, we can just see as the vaccines roll out, there's a bit more of a developing confidence about being able to get out and that sort of thing. I've got no doubt that 2022 we'll be having over 400 exhibitors and again, taking everything, including the Paddock to Plate program, another step further.
Well, people are very optimistic. You've got a smile on your face, and I should let you go and make sure that everything, because today's the big day, it's not just the exhibitors, you've got more of the public, the consumers, they're coming in. Bruce, good luck and well done.
Thanks very much, Michael. Great to be here. Thank you.
Bruce Wright, who is the Director of Primex 2021. And a reminder, here we are live streaming at the moment for the next hour or so. And if you've got a question about co-ops, you can jump online to go to co-opfarming.coop and have a question, and we'll be trying to meet those questions later on. Or you can also, a hotline to find out more about co-ops is 1300 665 174. That's 1300 665 174. And now we're talking about co-ops, and one of the largest co-ops, not just in this region, but also in the country when it comes to the beef industry and processing of meat, is the Casino Food Co-op. It's going through a number of different name changes, and Simon Stahl is the CEO of Casino Food Co-op. People are wanting more and more to know about where their food comes from, paddock to plate. Is that an advantage for co-ops as opposed to the big conglomerates?
Yeah, absolutely, because part of our ownership structure is the producer themselves, so we have access to the landholder, We do a lot of projects in terms of working with the farmers with their soil, for example, and productivity improvements on the land. So we get closer that way, and we get closer to the cattle and talk to them about where the meat ends up, and actually our part of the business when they send it along to the processing facility.
How much then, with the change in the name and a slight change in your diversifying, was that a problem selling it back to your producers and for them to have that confidence that the co-op was still going to be a co-op?
No, funnily enough, we were wondering how that would go, and been very well received. We did a lot of lead-up work. We explained how we came to it, and we had some really nice video presentations that we could release. And we thought, yeah, there might be a little bit of kickback, but not at all. I think what was really important is they knew that the co-op was still there. It's got under the brand established 1933, which is important. So same company, just a different name.
And being the same company, you're also, obviously, you're competing on the world stage. Exports, we're coming out of drought, bushfire, flood, and you've got the shadow of COVID as well. Is that changing your focus as a co-op, still being able to compete with exports?
Look, it's sharpening your focus on the domestic market, and there is a lot of opportunity on the domestic market in terms of retail and food service. But look, essentially 70% goes overseas, so your focus has to be overseas. It can be in a bit of a different offering nowadays. It doesn't have to be just big boxed primals. It can be a little bit more value add. Diversity of the product you produce for different markets, high end and commodity. Certainly you've got to stay quite focused. But you know, you mentioned the rest of the world. You'll have a look at what's happening in Argentina and you know, stopped their exports for their own domestic consumption. There's pressures on supply out of Brazil. At the end of the day, there's a really good opportunity in food in Australia, as you'll see the optimism around here for the few days, because protein is in high demand and supply is not meeting it. As a co-op, do you find it also at the same time, if you're dealing, you've got your members on board, are you having to educate the public as well about what you're doing and possibly the benefit for the local community? Yeah, very much so. Actually, we had a bit of a market test in the capital cities about a brand name for a particular product, and we had a name called Co-op Fresh, which made a lot of sense to us, but to the consumer it was, what is that? You know, there was no identifier. The preferred name was after a landscape or something similar. So it was quite interesting, and it still remains quite interesting how there's a lack of knowledge, particularly in the cities, of what a cooperative really means and some of the intrinsic value in a co-op. And that's a plus. And the fact that you're still very locally focused employment-wise, is that going to change that much because you are also targeting the wider community? Would you see still casino and this area as a real selling point for you? Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, look, we do draw cattle, and we've got members from across New South Wales and into Queensland, and a fair way up north in Queensland. So I think the strength is really that we're rural based, and we appeal to producers who are seeing again consolidation of industries. You know, if you have a look at other protein industries, there's a few big players, and they don't want beef to go the same way, and so we do give them that option, and I think it's very important, and they get it. Regional Australia gets it. If we were standing in this spot 12 months ago, there would be nothing going on. COVID and now Primex. You wander around, there's a real sense of optimism. How important, not just for you to be able to have your brand out at something like Primex, but how important has an event like this to be able to come back, and the size that it's come back already? Oh, look, it's incredibly important for a couple of reasons. It's a very good social event for a lot of people, and that networking can't be underestimated. Yeah, and you can't underestimate that opportunity to say good day to a friend and wander around. And then some of the business you do pick up at these shows, maybe a little less for us because it's obviously a machinery and aimed at a different part of agriculture, but people will tell you they can bump into someone and then they remember something and something goes on, and then all of a sudden there's some business coming out of it. So look, incredibly important opportunity to get together and celebrate everything that there is and do a bit of business. Simon Stahl, who is the CEO of Casino Food Co-op here at
Primex 2021 in the paddock to plate pavilion, and we're looking at the value of co-ops, and co-ops are enjoying a resurgence. And we're looking at not just the large co-ops, the smaller ones, the startups, but not just everyone's idea of a co-op is meat processing, dairy, the growth in horticulture, but actually there's also in co-ops the thing about being able to manage your risk, be able to raise finance accordingly. And so my next two guests, one is involved in very much the food processing meat side, a producer himself, and the other involved in risk and insurance advice. And if you can't pick who the primary producer is, I would go to your optometrist, because obviously John Segham with the hat is the chair of Casino Food Co-op, a beef producer himself, and Russell Memmott, who is with Willis Towers Watson, and he looks at things such as risk and insurance advice for the co-ops. But seeing we're at Primex 2021 and we're broadening the idea of what a co-op is, but there is that essential question and the smile on people's faces. We're at the end of the financial year, so the accountants and people in the finance sector, like Russell, are probably telling farmers, put your hand in your wallet. To people like John, and you're a commercial herd. John, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the co-op and the way that you're building an umbrella of co-ops, things must be pretty good compared to what they were 12 months ago for you.
Oh, most definitely. The livestock prices along the eastern seaboard have really skyrocketed, and we've not seen prices like that before. And yes, we've been able to capitalise on marketing our off-take to very, very high prices. And yeah, as you said, we're here at Primex, and a lot of smiles on the face.
A lot of smiles on the face. You probably were going through destocking. At the same time, you can see people around here. Have you got that same optimism of putting your hand in the wallet?
No, I'm one of these guys that I'd rather breed my own replacements. So there's an option, of course. You either buy in or you breed. So we've taken a decision at home to breed our own. So yes, we miss out on the sales of our younger heifers, but in the long run, we think we'll win because of we know what we've got, and yeah, we'll be in a better position.
Well, talking co-ops, and you've seen the co-op in its original form, and it's changed dramatically over the years, and you've gone through now just another change, and it's also rebranding. It's the Casino Food Co-op. So it's not just the processing of meat. What's the actual idea of what you're doing at the moment? Because you've also got another hat, not the one you're wearing at the moment. You've got another hat when it comes to wider co-ops.
Yes, correct. Look, the cooperative has changed. We were a 100% service processing plant, and we relied on other people to bring cattle to the plant, and we've changed that slightly, that mix. We've actually own our own marketing business of bringing cattle to the plant, so we've got a little bit of control of numbers coming through. But you're right about changing our name from an abattoir or meat business to a food business, because at the end of the day we are part of the food chain. Even at home when I'm mustering cattle, putting them on a truck, I'm part of the food chain. We put it to the abattoirs, it's processed, it goes into packs, goes to the wholesalers and retailers. They're all part of the food chain. And I think that's just a realisation. It's a realisation of what we do and where we're placed. As far as the Cooperative Alliance is concerned, yeah, we got together as a group of 6 cooperatives in the area that got together over a few drinks one night and said, you know what, we all do the same thing. We've got the same values, the same aspirations, so let's just try and work together. I'm very proud of, I may add, that our initial discussions was about how we talk about cooperatives to the general public. We brought in the Southern Cross University to help us with our discussions, and that was the genesis of the Farming Together program. So very proud of that.
Well, we're talking about you getting wider, to go wider. It obviously needs things like finance and what have you. Russell Memmott, you're with the Willis Towers Watson, WTW, and you look at risk and how to raise finance. would a lot of people be surprised that, in fact, when it comes to co-ops, you have a role in that area?
Absolutely. There's no question, Michael, that climate risk for agriculture is extremely important globally, as well as particularly in Australia, where we have such extreme weather. Unfortunately, there is no insurance available. It's an industry that the insurance industry has always struggled with crop insurance, and farmers rely on government subsidies, government grants. And as an example, 97% of Australian farmers choose not to insure.
We've certainly seen that with the catastrophes that have been going on.
That's exactly right. Whereas in America, all farmers insure in America because they get a 65% subsidy on premiums from the government, which goes back to the 1930s. So that's the challenge. However, things are changing here. There's been some projects that I've been involved with University of Southern Queensland, the latest one being the Future Drought Fund, which is headed in Toowoomba, but which will have a node in Lismore, and we're going to bring in the research we've done to translate that into insurable, affordable products for farmers.
Because you've also been involved with the National Farmers Federation. What has that been? Because they're looking at the wider picture of agriculture. What can you offer them?
Well, we believe, and so does Melina and the whole BCCM team believe, that a mutual is an ideal way for farmers to sort of work together to get, through bulk buying power, reduce costs. That's the problem. There isn't a big enough pool of premium because of insurers being scared of climate risk to provide attractive insurance. But we think with a mutual cooperative approach, bringing them together, the premiums get reduced and we get more appetite from farmers. And that's the approach that mutuals need to take, and we're right behind.
Well, you're hearing John talk about how they're widening what the Casino Food Co-op does itself, and then also he's working very close as a champion of co-ops, of bringing in and helping new co-ops and what have you. So how closely would someone like you be handy to work with either an established co-op or a startup?
It's a perfect opportunity. As I said, co-ops, insurance mutuals are just ideal as long as they're handled the right way to start off a co-op. And just to give a brief understanding of how it would work, the members, the farmers, contribute to a fund. That fund arranges reinsurance to protect against a major catastrophe, but not all the money goes into the insurers. Part of it is kept in a fund. So when the bad years occur, the losses occur and the reinsurance pays, so does the mutual. But when the good years occur, let's say 1 in every 9 out of 10 years, all the premium doesn't go into the insurer's hands, and therefore there's a smoothing out effect over a period of time. So that's why a mutual approach, farmers get buy-in to the actual mutual and the cooperative, rather than everything going to insurance companies and them losing interest because they haven't made enough money, and gets more insurers interested in group buying power. So definitely good opportunity.
John, as a primary producer, not just as a chair, but as the primary producer, at the end of the day, you love your cattle and you want to do well with that. How handy then is, and if co-ops get themselves involved in the wider part of industry, something that Russell is doing, and he studied with the NFF and that sort of thing, how important therefore is it for co-ops to educate and be telling people, look, there's advice on risk assessment, or we can go into the market and get you a better deal?
Look, extremely important, and isn't that the ethos of being a cooperative? Working together, growing together. In fact, the Co-op Alliance is at the moment working with the VCCM, looking at developing a labour cooperative. All our businesses have peaks and flows on our labour, peak labour demands, and we have a certain skill set. And what we're looking at doing is using that, our cooperative, or even establishing a cooperative, to run a labour, not a labour pool, but a labour skill set, so that we can all share. but then we're able to share that amongst ourselves. I mean, that's the ethos of a cooperative. But you're right at the start when you said that it's not just about processing. Co-ops can be anything where people get together to try and achieve a common goal.
Russell, and we've only got a couple of seconds left. The great one is funeral directors.
Oh, funeral. Well, we only just heard about this recently. It's been around for a while. In London, there's a 180-year-old company that's suddenly being demutualised without the shareholders, the members even knowing about it. And they were involved in penny mutual contributions, a very successful business for 170 years. And suddenly the commercialisation greed came in and decided to turn that into a company situation with stakeholders, promised they'll make a lot of money out of it, and a great institution has been lost through demutualisation. So the thinking is, you get into an opportunity to get into a mutual, you want to stay in it, because there's tremendous advantages of being involved.
Well, there you've got two very different people. They've both got striped shirts, but that's, I suppose, where it finishes. John Seckham, a primary producer and the chair of Casino Food Co-op, and Russell Memmott, who is with Willis Towers Watson as an advisor and broker on insurance in the primary sector. And both of them very optimistic. They're also big fans of co-ops themselves, as you can gather. And that's why we're here today at Primex 2021 in Casino. We're looking at cooperatives, cooperative farming, why people should be in co-ops. And if you want more answers, you can also get on the phone, and it's 1300 665 174. Or if you've got a question during today's broadcast, and we're on air now for about another hour or so, you can jump online at co-opfarming.co, and the questions, you go to the chat box on your YouTube link, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions later in the program. So, future-proofing of businesses and what we've just talked about, there's also an interesting part. We've heard about insurance being different. There's also another part of co-ops, and it's an area in the industry that's crucial for the future, particularly of livestock, and that also is being looked at, and you can find out more about co-ops as well. Nigel, the image of co-ops is meat processors, dairy production, and increasingly in horticulture. Genetics Australia as a co-op, how does that operate?
Well, Genetics Australia formed in 1958, and it's our co-op members are predominantly dairy farmers. And traditionally back then, pre-genomics, to get a dairy bull to be proven and daughter proven, they had to be progeny tested. So a lot of our co-op members were progeny test herds. So they had to be a co-op member to get access to the semen, and then we'd use those herds to collect the data. So the milk herd test data would be collected, and the structural traits and everything else collected. And that all gets fed into the herd improvement centre, which will give a bull of proof after about 5 years. And then those rest of our co-op will get access to some of the best bulls in the country that were proven in Australia.
So the members, they've got access to all this data. It still depends on them feeding that data back in, whether it be on a heifer or on a bull. Is it only then accessed the information for the co-op members?
No, it's public information. So it goes into a system called DataGene. So all the data goes into there. But without our members, there's no data. And so without the data, you can't prove the bulls, basically. So the data will get fed into there, and when the data reaches a certain reliability, it's published in a catalogue and online now. And that's what's used for farmers to make their decisions on what bulls to use in the future to improve their genetic gain and their productivity.
Co-ops are enjoying a resurgence at the moment, and people looking at buying locally and wanting to know about paddock to plate. A dairy co-op, for example, makes money.
Yeah.
How then does Genetics Australia, are you selling the information on to other people at the same time?
We're selling the semen, basically.
Right, so once you've worked out the bloodline,
yeah,
then whoever then wants, and so you're not just doing the genetics, you're also doing the semen of those particular sites.
Yeah, so the co-op owns the bulls, and they're distributing the semen to the co-op members to use.
And what about outside of those 1,100 members? Like, you've got interest in Ireland.
Yeah, we have a system from Ireland. It's like a Fitbit for cows, a collar that they wear.
What do you mean to say, like, this watch that I've got is a Fitbit that tells me how far I've walked, my blood pressure?
Yeah, no, these monitor everything from when the cow's ruminating to when they're walking, if they're distressed, when they're cycling and on heat, and it all gives the farmer all the information straight onto their smartphone or their iPad.
And does that also go in long-term into the data for Genetics Australia?
No, that doesn't, but that's heavily used in the day-to-day farm management by our co-op members.
And so even, as I say, you've got the Irish interest.
Yep.
You're cattle, you're not sheep, and you're not thoroughbreds at the moment. I look here, we've got beef and dairy. They're your
That's
big...
right, yeah.
And people from overseas, whether they be someone in the US that's interested in a particular bloodline, they can go into Genetics Australia and work it out.
Yeah, no, we do both. We import a lot of beef and dairy semen from overseas, from Italy, Germany, the USA, Canada, but also we export quite a lot of Australian genetics now, beef and dairy genetics to Asia, China, the USA, Canada, Latin America. So we're spreading out Australian genetics all around the world now.
Welcome back to Co-operative Farming, where we're live streaming from Primex 2021 at Casino, where people are streaming in, just like a live stream, taking part in day 3 of Primex 2021. And there's a lot of optimism, whether they're primary producers, whether they are people just interested in the primary sector. And there's that greater interest now of people wanting to know about buying local, eating locally and employing locally. And one person who is involved in an industry that's enjoyed extraordinary growth in the last few years, and they are very involved when it comes at the co-op level of trying to develop for people that they've got those skills. They don't just rely on people coming in from elsewhere, and they still do have to look at workers from coming in from elsewhere, but obviously with things like COVID, that's also changed a bit of the thinking. But the person who's standing next to me is Satpal Gill. And Satpal, you are the chair of Ausgroup, which is effectively based at Coffs Harbour, and you are involved in the berry industry. And it's had extraordinary growth over the last, probably a decade, really.
Yeah, probably over the last decade, but we've been going since about 2000. So as the decline of the banana industry hit the Coffs Harbour region around the late 1990s, a couple of the growers got into blueberries, and I think from being in the notion of being an industry that was in a decline, why was the decline was the first question. And that was basically because of poor marketing, poor leadership, and basically no direction in the industry. We had a great product, the New South Wales bananas, but we just didn't know how to market it. So when we got into the blueberry industry, I think that was the first thing, like we need to get better at marketing this type of fruit.
Well, you're interesting too in the fact that you've been there since day one, and you're a bit different in the fact that here we are talking about the growth of co-ops and the fact that there are more and more co-ops being developed, but you were one of 4, your business partners in a way, but in fact, you weren't a co-op.
No, I think us 4 always worked like a co-op, and that was the model that we really wanted. We wanted to kind of have this where it was a grower-owned business as to a business that was making profits, so all the profits went back to the actually grower. But even after we formed a company and we had more than 50 shareholders up there, and we thought, no, this is not going to work because we had poor accounting advice at the start, and because we really should have been a cooperative from day one. But luckily, around 2014, we formed a cooperative, and from there we just expanded because it allowed us that flexibility now to work as an entity.
Well, you had 50 shareholders at that point. If a person came to you and said, look, we're macadamia growers, there's only 5 of us, why should we go into a co-op? What would you be telling them?
I think there's always, if you make a really robust business, something that will benefit everyone. Like having a cooperative now, we've got our own agronomy team. We can have services like our own produce store. So we're trying to value add all the time, and like together, we're quite large, and we can actually play it with the big corporates. And I think that's the problem in Australian farming at the moment. A single entity family farmer is so much, he's up against so much that it's so difficult to live in this corporate world and to actually make a buck. But as a cooperative, we're one of the largest blueberry producers in Australia. So that allows us to play with the Woolworths and the Coles and the Aldis. And you know, we can actually sit on the table and look at how we're going to sell the product as to not having any plan at all.
Well, it's interesting when you go to your plant there at Coffs Harbour, and there's two lines of the berries being packed. One is the Oz Group, and then one is for Driscoll's, who go into the supermarkets as well. And you made that comment, a bit like John Seckham, the previous guest, about you love being a grower of berries. You don't really want to be on the phone worrying about the marketing. So you've got a marketing team, but why in a co-op does it work better than when you were just the 4 partners or the 50 partners and it was a private business?
Look, I think you get so many minds, so many skills of all farmers coming in. Instead of working like a kind of a closed business, you open yourself up to other people and other ideas. And I think that's the one of the big benefits of cooperatives. We've got a lot of smart people out there. And you know, when you get together and you brainstorm, a lot of good ideas come out of that you didn't think that 5 people could come up with. But if you have a broader group, yeah, it kind of steers you in a direction that everyone wants to go.
Saptil Gill is the chair of the Oz Group, berries, based at Coffs Harbour, but growing right along the mid-north coast and the north coast. Saptil, you made a comment, and that surprised me the first time I went to a field day of berry growers, is you'd think about the labour, picking, the growers like yourself, but suddenly there were all these, I think there were 3 agronomists there on the day talking. So you've got that skill factor. As a co-op, and you've gone through the employment problem because of COVID, how much can a co-op, particularly one like Oz Group, be developing the local skills so people say, oh, look, I'm only going to be here for picking season, what else can you offer me?
Yeah, well, you know, actually some of the pickers that are coming from overseas, they're multi-skilled. You know, you might have someone that's worked in a TV company, so they might want to make a video, an induction video. Like I had one guy that was he was a part of quite a big TV station back in Korea, and he said, "Hey, you want me to make you an induction video for your farm?" I said, "Go ahead." And it was very professional. So, I mean, not just that. I mean, you can put them and re-skill them into different places, like even into our pack house and stuff like that. And having a cooperative, having a broad area of growing, allows you, if one area is not peaking yet, you can send those people to other areas. So, you work with each other, basically.
I suppose the other thing with a co-op in particular, and even, you are what we'd call medium to large co-op. You've got the larger ones like Norco and Casino Food Co-op, but then there's the smaller ones. But it does strike many people when they start seeing the value in co-ops that it's not like the Titanic and the iceberg. You can actually change direction fairly quickly. How much all the members have got one vote. How difficult is it to make sure that they're on board?
Yeah, I won't say it's easy. we've had a few heated arguments in the past, but I think if the common good is there, and most people look, it's your livelihood, it's your business, so people take it very seriously. I mean, even though it's a cooperative is a great kind of a model to work with, but at the end of the day, people have to make a profit. And people are really, worried. I mean, how are they going to make that profit? And I think them decisions become very true and very directional in which way they want to go.
Well, you've got people that have been working with the co-op, whether they've been on the processing side or picking for a number of years. Obviously, you're doing something right. At the same time, how do you see the berry industry going? Because you're looking at expansion, you're always looking at another avenue. How do you see it going?
I think it's looking good because we're just starting to develop now a blackberry consumer market in Australia.
Can't beat a good blackberry.
Yeah, they are. They're beautiful tasting blackberries. It's actually the varieties coming out of the world now in those type of spaces are getting beautiful flavour and they're very nutritional. So blackberries and raspberries is something that our growers are starting to diversify into, like still growing berries, but still getting kind of their hands on different categories of berries, and that's exciting too. So we can see the Australian consumers really lapping up raspberries and blackberries now. So maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was blueberries. It was really ramping up from a niche food to now a household. It's like an apple and orange, a blueberry. And I hope, like, maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, blackberries, raspberries are pretty much there. But I think blackberries is going to be another product that might be on everyone's table.
And with that, are you still finding it a bit difficult to be able to... You can get the backpackers and what have you, but being able to convince agronomists that there's a career by moving to a place like Coffs Harbour and be involved in the industry?
It's been a challenge because going to a new farming or new horticulture, it always experiences is one thing that's always lacking out there because it's a new industry. It's very closed to a certain area. So although there's a lot of expertise overseas, it's very hard to procure them in these type of things. But even for an agronomist, for someone that's looking for a job, like we appreciate new graduates coming up to our area and they want to start. There's a lot of work out there, but there is challenges. But I think there's a lot of room in that space for more agronomists to come.
Satbel Gill, I'll let you go and enjoy a blueberry, a blackberry, and with a dairy product probably from Norco, I reckon, with fresh cream poured across them, and it's lunchtime. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Satbel Gill, who is the chair of Oz Group, based at Coffs Harbour, and they do their berries and what have you. It's just magnificent. Here at the Primex 2021, looking at co-operative farming. And if you've got a question, you can jump on co-opfarming.coop and we'll be looking at those. But let's find out what else farmers are thinking at the moment while they're wandering around Primex 2021.
Look, you've got to have a big heart when you're on a farm, especially in these areas because the seasons can make or break you.
Yeah, well, it was really hard with the drought and all that because we struggled a lot because we had no water and we had to get water delivered out.
So there's a lot of pressure being felt, but the general vibe for people coming out is that they are looking for that Australian-made manufacturing. They do want to support Australia.
But a bit of a shortage of cattle around the country.
Good for prices?
Good for prices, yeah, really good. Really good in the beef industry, overdue for some good prices and a bit of a run on it.
In our area, it's pretty good now, yeah, I think that has picked up, yeah.
Now the drought's over, the fires are gone, we've had a lot of rain, the country looks great and everybody's positive.
Cattle prices are great, so we sold some last week and did very well. So that's helped the pocket as well to be able to purchase something. Yeah.
Well, the general feelings, they're very optimistic about the future of the beef industry. I think there was a lot of cattle lost in the drought and they're still trying to build up their herds and I think there's a big opportunity there for a while yet.
I felt through COVID that farmers really had their profile lifted. Going into a supermarket in Australia where there was not food on the shelf, I think was a real shock to a lot of people. So it's really, raised our profile.
In the paddock to plate pavilion, and one of the major co-ops in this area is Norco, and they make I must admit, I'm biased about their ice cream. It's not bad indeed. And Norco is also the naming sponsor of Primex, and they're involved very carefully. So why not find out exactly what Norco is doing, and better than Michael Hampson, who is the CEO of Norco. Given what's gone on in the dairy industry the last few years, and now we've also had drought, flood, bushfires, and we've got the shadow of COVID as well, people are starting to talk more about local, buying locally, production locally. Would that be a plus for a co-op such as Norco?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think customers, members of the public really do understand that buying Australian, buying local is good. But when you're buying from a co-op that's owned by the farmer, it's just that extra 1 or 2 levels above. Because every single cent, every single amount of value that comes back to that cooperative goes to benefit the farmers, whether that's in dividends in better pricing or in the value of their cooperative, which lends them to be much more confident in their farming operation so that they can invest and do things better for the future. So I think yes is your question, and being a cooperative gives that extra level of certainty to the consumer that when they're buying that product, that it's going to help farmers more than once in terms of just buying their product, but this whole value ecosystem that helps them in their farming enterprise.
It's a bit of a fine line for something like a well-run co-op as well, because you're also looking at export, not just milk. You export a very nice ice cream.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
How do you avoid that change in the image of localism and helping the local community, whereas really to survive against some of the massive dairy processors in the world, you've got to be looking overseas, don't you?
We certainly do have an export and a thriving export, both fresh milk business and ice cream business. And we have some excellent people in our business that look to operate that area. But we see that as an opportunity to take value and bring that back locally. So when we export, when we sell product overseas, we're obviously taking value from overseas countries, and we're bringing that back to us and being able to distribute that both to our members but obviously to our employees and to our community. So we see it as a very good multiplier to what we do as a cooperative, which is really trying to bring value back to farming, our people and our communities.
You're able to pay a good price for milk after a number of years when prices were well and truly down.
Sure.
As the co-op, you're offering good prices. Things are very optimistic. You've got a lot of other product. Are people knocking on the door to get back into co-ops?
It's interesting. I mean, we've sort of heard some things in the industry in terms of interest of what cooperatives, what benefits they bring, and we're certainly happy to provide what we see the benefits to those people. But we're sort of sitting there still working through how do we continue the value that we've been able to generate for our farmers over the longer term, because we really want to make sure that the value that we've been able to create is something sustainable that will occur for over a longer period of time rather than just 1 or 2 seasons, which has sort of been the history of agriculture. We're certainly looking to see how that's going to be more sustainable.
Would you like to see greater education, not just for the primary producers, but also for the urban consumer on what co-ops have to offer? It's obvious, rural supplies and also the processing of the product, but there's also finance and risk and that sort of thing. Do you think even a lot of your own members aren't aware that how co-ops can help in that way?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think we certainly have a lot of programs which we communicate regularly to our members, and there's a lot of uptake on those. In terms of the consumer really understanding that there is a very big difference between a cooperative and a corporation, particularly one that's either it's offshore organisation or it's listed. There's a different piece of value in terms of where the profits go from that organisation, who they go to help and support. The profits in a cooperative go to the farmers that are the members that provide the produce, where the profits from other organisations go to shareholders, whether they're domiciled in Australia or they're domiciled offshore. That's a really key difference that educating the public should certainly help the cooperatives and then help farmers.
Well, you've got rural supplies. Obviously, your core is taking in milk. Mm-hmm. You're exporting ice cream. Is there anything that you could see Norco expanding and going in a slightly different direction at the moment?
I think our business will be certainly very much focused around dairy, food and agricultural services. And we've got some exciting NPD that we're looking at. We've got some new products that are currently in development, which is good with some partners. And they should come out on the supermarket shelves over the next 3 to 4 months.
Hello, I'm Michael Kavanagh, standing in the pavilion, the Paddock to Plate pavilion at Casino, where it's Primex 2021 underway, and we're live streaming for the next half an hour or so, where you can also put questions about cooperative farming. And as you can probably gather, we're in a tin shed, and with the rain that's coming down at the moment, it's a lot of atmosphere, and people have naturally enough sought shelter from the rain, and it has come down. You can always guarantee the first 2 days have been absolutely magnificent. Now the rain, it's certainly coming down. It's keeping people happy though, because walking around Primex, and you wouldn't be doing it right at the moment because of the rain, but walking around Primex the other 2 days, the primary producers and the public in general have all had smiles on their face. And if you want to know more about co-op farming and you're contemplating, You can either ring the hotline, which is 1300 665 174, or you can jump online and ask a question, and hopefully we'll be able to get to some of those questions during today's broadcast. And the questions, comments, chat box on YouTube link. Well, it's apt that there's so much water around at the moment coming down because one of my two guests with me is very much involved in water, and it's also a subject that's one of my two favourites, seafood. And then the gentleman on my left from Marquee Macadamia, and I'll introduce them, probably two of the most dear things when it comes to food is macadamias and seafood. And the people that I'm with at the moment is Daniel Adams, who is the CEO of the Clarence River Fishermen's Co-op, and I love going to fish co-ops. And also with me is Larry McHugh, who is the CEO of Marquee Macadamias, which, like a lot of the other large co-ops, have undergone name changes recently. Daniel, fish co-ops, fishing's gone through incredible reforms in the last couple of years. How important is therefore a co-op in the present climate for fishermen?
So it's important to be able to get their product to market. So the cooperative is the consolidation arm of that product. And, we manage the ability to be able to return viable prices back to them and I guess spread the load of the product across multiple arms versus just one sales chain.
Fishermen and all farmers, all primary producers are notoriously private people. They like to work by themselves. At the top of the tree, you'd have to say fishermen are definitely ones that like, apart from their decking, but they don't like letting on, they don't know what's going on. A co-op, how do you find dealing with your members? Because you've got a great co-op. Any fish co-op, in my view, is fantastic. Walking in and seeing the fresh catch. Do you still find that a bit of a problem to be able to explain to them why they should be still there in a co-op?
Absolutely, and I think we're going through a big change in our own business at the moment, and one of the things that we need to keep bringing it back to is the services that we provide them and the facilities that are there for them. Basically they're showholders, so that's their business, and trying to get them to support the business and see the value in what we do is ever evolving. So, yeah.
Well, the macadamia, it's Australia's indigenous nut, although interesting enough, commercially, it was US servicemen after the Second World War that saw the value of macadamias, and they took them and started growing them in Hawaii. But anyway, fortunately, we've grabbed them and pulled them back. And Larry, you as the CEO of Marquee Macadamias, in effect, really, the popularity of macadamias, we can't get enough of what you're growing, can we?
No, it's been a problem for quite some time with macadamias that the world just can't get enough, and we've been in an undersupply situation for a long time. So there's a lot of plantings going on at the moment around Australia to try and keep up with that, and around the world, in fact.
As a co-op, you mentioned plantings. What can you offer a potential grower when it does come to plantings? Because if I recall, there's essentially two varieties of the macadamia that you can eat, and then there's extension of those varieties.
That's correct. There's two species, two main planted species, but then there's hundreds of varieties. So we can offer help to growers who are coming into the industry. We have a lot of experienced people who have been with us for 20 and 30 years who've seen a lot of growth across the industry across that time. And of course, the other thing we can offer growers as they come in is a market for their product. And that's where we specialise in world marketing. We export all around the world.
Well, we've talked to other co-ops that have going through either rebranding. The Casino Food Co-op is an interesting one. You too have gone through rebranding. When you think about it, macadamias, like, why do you need to rebrand something that is so good anyway?
We were very confusing for our customers because we had 3 company names and 3 brands underneath us. So we were forever explaining ourselves to our customers. This is the company. This is the product. So we decided to unite under one name, which has been very helpful. Actually, we've been that way for a year and a little bit now, and it's going very well.
Danielle, what's with a co-op? And it's always interested me. I love going into a local area and walking to a co-op and doing two things: either saying to the co-op, where's the best seafood restaurant in town, because you think they're going to be buying locally, or you go to the co-op and buy fish. A number of other seafood co-ops I've spoken to, they said that, and it's great marketing at the same time, how you walk into any restaurant and you know you'll get salmon and you'll get barramundi. How difficult, and for a co-op, you're involved in the marketing side. Are you finding that increasingly restaurants are willing to listen to what you've got to offer locally caught?
It depends on the level of the restaurant. The challenge is, in our industry's trying to enforce an expectation of provenance, and really advertising. You go to a restaurant, you see flathead. Is that flathead Australian or is it from South America? And product labelling is something that we're really pushing for behind the scenes. Overall, Australia overarching. The challenge also is that the species are similar, but they are from different countries. And having a cafe as an example, actually advertise on their menu that they are supplying product from a local supplier is always challenging. So,
like all the primary sector, it's getting youth, getting people back in. And to buy a trawler, it's not something like you pull the wallet out of the back pocket and say, I've got a new trawler. How can co-ops, not necessarily finance, but what can you provide for a potential new fisher coming in?
Look, I think it's just that saying to them, they've made the investment into the business itself. We take away the pain of managing debtors, and we take away the pain of logistics and actually working out where they're going to send their product to. So our services is that you bring it to us, we'll worry about the chasing the money, we'll worry about getting it to market, and we'll also work out where we can best send it to filter so that you get the best return possible. So,
Larry, you mentioned about increased plantings because you can't meet domestic demand, let alone the export demand and the need for it. And just how then, and you mentioned about breeding, varieties, plantings, how much would a co-op be like yours advising your growers?
We give a lot of advice to our growers. In our company we have five advisors out there the whole time. Anything from the use of fertilisers through to what trees to plant and how to go about planting. We're also fortunate in our co-op to have some large growers who also help the smaller growers coming in, and I think that's one of the big things about cooperatives is that you get a sharing of information across growers, and that's proven to be very, very useful for us over time.
Because you'd also be sharing what works and what doesn't in certain areas.
And that's the big case with macadamias is something that works here on the Northern Rivers doesn't work in Queensland. So there's been a lot of work put into trying to work out what works best where and transferring that information around. And it's still going. So it's still going in the macadamia industry. Really, we started planting in the late 70s, but we're still a young industry as far as tree nuts go.
Danielle, just very briefly, we've gone through some interesting conditions. Are you optimistic?
I have to be. I have no option. There are over 100 fishermen relying on me doing my job. We have a team of 70 plus staff. Optimism is something that, you have to be. So, yeah, of course.
Larry, there's also the growth and advice around the world. Like macadamia growers in the industry actually work with the South Africans. They're growing dramatically. China. Does the co-op model assist in that?
Certainly does. Our co-op has actually just taken on a new partner in South Africa, so we're now a fully grower-owned company with a subsidiary company in South Africa. So we're extending the grower-owned across the world and using that to get more marketing power so that we can continue to open world market for macadamias as they grow all around the world, not just in Australia. So our cooperative is mainly based in Australia, but being able to have product from the world helps us a lot.
Danielle, I'm a big fan of do nothing with your fish. Just maybe a bit of butter, salt and pepper. What do you reckon? Is that the way to go?
Salt and pepper, yep, on the barbie. Perfect.
And Larry, with a macadamia, I know in this area there's the macadamias dipped in dark chocolate. And I must admit, I'm not a big chocolate eater, but a macadamia dipped in dark chocolate, and they would come out with a wasabi and that sort of thing. But really, which is your favourite?
Straight from the tree. Nothing like it. So roast them or have them raw, but nothing like them straight from the tree and fresh.
Well, it is lunchtime, so I suggest why don't you go and have a lovely piece of fish, maybe filleted, and then follow it up with some macadamias to munch on either before, if you're having a drink, or afterwards. Danielle Adams and Larry McHugh. Danielle is with the Clarence River Fishermen Co-op as the CEO. and Larry McHugh is the CEO of Marquee Macadamia. And here we are at the Paddock to Plate Pavilion in the casino where the Primex 2021 is occurring. And we're looking at co-operative farming and how it's going and why people should be able to have a look at getting into cooperatives. So to both of you, it is lunchtime. Thank you very much for coming in, and we'll find out more about cooperative farming. You're practising an area which has got two of the longest running co-ops in the country, two very successful ones, and we're actually seeing, particularly in the horticulture side, small co-ops starting up. Now, you come from also a farming background as well, but is there that much knowledge amongst accountants about setting up and then also running and the benefits of a co-op?
No, we find that because they've been fairly few and far between. I mean, you've got your mutuals, your bigger mutuals, your NRMAs, etc., that have existed in the past, but at that cooperative level where it's everyone shares equally, the people don't quite understand what that means, and it takes a little bit of education around that, it's quite a unique concept to most people.
Well, you're also seeing farmers' books at the moment, the end of the financial year, and conditions now after we've had flood, drought, bushfire, and there's the shadow of COVID as well.
Correct, yeah.
Do you find actually once they're involved with a co-op, whether they're setting it up or getting the benefits of it, these present conditions, is it really ripe for co-ops to even consolidate and grow?
Well, we think it is. We've certainly seen a lot of movement recently. As I said, the BCCM has been provided with funding, and they've used that wisely to educate and provide people with startup funding, education type funding. And they're coming to see people like us, the BCCM, legal people, to understand what a cooperative looks like and how it can benefit their community. And quite often the benefit of a cooperative is it benefits a community. So you can see not only have you got your big cooperatives like around here, but you've got people looking at buying the local hardware store to keep the business in town. A cooperative structure where everyone shares in the cooperative, they get the benefits out of it, which might mean reduced prices. It might just mean keeping employment in the town. It's as simple as that.
That's the point that's interesting, is that we automatically think of co-ops as essentially producer-driven, producers supplying, or the mutual banks. But the fact that you just used as a really good example, you mean to say that it's even worth, particularly if the primary producers and the townsfolk get together, they can actually set up a co-op that effectively keeps a business running in that town.
In that town, that's exactly right. So we are dealing with someone who's looking at acquiring the local hardware store because it's going to disappear because of competition. There's other cooperatives like workers' cooperatives where you can have a number of workers pooled together and you can draw the workers out of that cooperative and then someone else can use them as well for a resource perspective. So it's pretty endless as to the opportunities you can create from a cooperative. And as I said, everyone shares in it, one member, one vote. So no one's going to get an advantage over anyone else out of it, and everyone shares in the benefits.
Is the legislation there that's making it easy? Because you set up a co-op, whether you're going in with 1,000 members or 5 members, it's probably the same effort, realistically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think, like any business, nothing's easy. You've got to get your structure right, and that structure in relation to corporate structure and taxation benefits. You've also then got to run the business. So that takes effort, that takes expertise. But like anything, start off small and it'll snowball and it'll get there at the end of the day.
It'd take some other skills of an accountant though, wouldn't it? Because you're setting up primary producers passionate about what they're doing, and there's usually a bit of history in the community. It's not just a matter of saying, right, this is the way you do your books. How much is it also you a bit of a negotiator and a facilitator to get them together so they do know what they're doing?
Certainly, again, similar to another business, you need all sorts of skills around the table, legal, accounting, marketing, whatever it might be, depending on what you want to set up. But the better mix of skills that you got, I guess the better you're going to be in the long run. Some cooperatives, they've got their primary producer members as their members and they sit on the board, but they've got an opportunity through their rules to bring in independent directors and bring some expertise to the table. So that adds value as well.
So the future's looking bright, a bit like primary sector at the moment.
Yeah, it's we've come through a lot, but it's looking pretty good, and the Northern Rivers area is going great guns, and glad to be part of it. It's a beautiful area.
Kevin Franey, who is the managing partner of TNR. I'm Michael Kavanagh, and we're live streaming from the Casino Primex 2021, and we're looking at cooperative farming and the benefits of co-ops, and the way that if you want to ask some questions, you can jump online at co-opfarming.co, or if you've got a question that maybe might come up you want to answer later in the week, you can dial in on 1300 665 174. And with the questions, the comments, you can go to the chat box on YouTube link. Standing here, and they'll both claim credit for it, we've just had a downpour of rain, and it's not as though we're hit by floods at the moment. You walk around Primex 2021 the last 2 days and today, the sense of optimism is unbelievable. People, and it's the end of the financial year, so no doubt the accountants are telling the farmers put their hands in their wallets and go and spend. And as I say, we've just had this incredible downpour. In the last 12 to 18 months, every time I've had to deal with one of my two guests here, it's been flood, drought and bushfire, and he's had to deal with it in that sense, and that's the Federal Minister for Agriculture, David Littleproud, and then flanked on the other side, the national member, also the federal member for the seat of Page, and Kevin Hogan. And so which of you two are going to claim the rain? David?
Well, I'm the Minister for Drought as well, so I'm taking, because I get blamed for the drought, so I may as well take the credit when it does come from the sky.
Does that surprise you? And him being a minister, you've got to agree with him, don't you, Kevin?
Look, we do all the hard work. The Cabinet Ministers always claim the glory, Michael, you know that?
Now, you've wandered around, and as I said, the last 12 to 18 months, whenever you and I cross paths, me as a journalist for the ABC in particular, you'd be looking at dairy prices. You had to be putting your hand in the wallet for drought, bushfire. Around here at the moment, there's incredible optimism. Are you getting a sense of that, not just here, and you're a proud Queenslander, don't tell me over the north of the border, they're even prouder.
Oh, we always are, and I just cast everyone's mind back to State of Origin last year and the great victory that Queensland had. But there is optimism, and you know what, it's not my wallet, it's the Australian taxpayers' wallet. Nearly $11 billion committed for drought, over $3 billion for the northwest Queensland floods, where we lost 500,000 head in 24 hours. And then obviously the bushfires here, $2 billion plus has been committed. But what changes that, no matter what you as the Australian taxpayer puts out to support these communities, is rain. And the optimism shifts. And when you give optimism to farmers, and as a former bank manager that used to sit around farmers' kitchens tables, that does more, not just for farmers, but for the communities that support them. And that's what we're seeing both up in beef in Rocky, and I'm hearing around here, that people have got the optimism and the courage now to go out and have a crack. And that's the Australian spirit, and that's regional rural Australia's spirit, is when it's there, have a crack, have a go, and that's what makes us different to people that live in the city. And when we do, we're going to make a lot of money, and so we should, because we've had some tough years, and that's why things like the instant asset write-off's been really important. I think that's better than a corporate tax cut. Actually incentivising people to go and spend money, and I just encourage people, spend it with local businesses out here, the local machinery dealer, the local car dealer, because it goes around our economy, and we're the ones that have kept this nation going since COVID started. If it wasn't for agriculture, wasn't for resources, our economy would be buggered. And we now have some power, but we've got to support one another, so buy locally, and that just throws the money back through our cycle. And we can come out of this being prepared for the next drought or the next flood that's going to come. But, you know, the fact that we've just dusted ourselves off again, and particularly this region, I've got to say, you've gone through floods, the drought and the fires, all within a section of probably 2 or 3 years of one another, and to still be swinging says a lot about the people, and I think that's just this is the real Australia. This is the genuine Australia out here, people that live out here and what they face up to, but what they do for our nation, people in the city need to understand.
Well, that's the interesting point about people needing to understand in the city. Kevin, you're in an area where two of the oldest and most successful co-ops are. We've seen the change with what is now Casino Food Co-op, the meat processing, and then we've also got Norco, and you and I were talking before you came on air, as an enjoyable day was at Norco when they were looking at exporting their ice cream, which does taste a lot. It tastes great. But you as a federal member, people around here know about co-ops. How difficult is it for you to actually get across the importance of co-ops to your own members, and also, and the Minister made reference to those in the city, because I think city people are very interested in that buy local and they want to know about co-ops.
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and we are very unique because besides the meatworks, besides the dairy co-op, we have fishing co-ops, blueberry co-ops, macadamia co-ops, so we are quite unique in that sense. So it was great a few years ago, and I think there's a resurgence in that model. I love the model of a co-op because we own, the producers own a bit of the supply chain and get into the processing part of it as well. That's really important for looking after each other's interests. So we launched the Farming Together program about 4 or 5 years ago, and our local university, in fact Southern Cross University, took ownership of coordinating that, and there has been a resurgence in co-ops across not just this region, but we wanted it to be national. But the challenge there is the legal requirements, the accounting requirements, and all those are different. So part of the whole Farming Together process wasn't just giving some small co-ops some money to get going, but it was giving them that expertise, the accounting expertise, the legal expertise to make that model work. So I'm really excited by it. There's some great things happening across the country, not just this area, because it's a really good model and really good for producers.
Is there also still room, and you as the federal member for Page, and you've got terrific understanding of co-ops and the importance locally, is there a need for you to go as the federal member for Page and not necessarily go to the Agriculture Minister, but the wider, and saying, look, we do need to tweak this, or this needs to be looked at?
Absolutely, and not just with my federal parliamentary colleagues, but we need to go to government agencies, because the Australian Tax Office or ASIC and a lot of these authorities don't necessarily get it or aren't used to it as well. And even down to the fact that we go, and we've had an education program with local accountants and local legal people across the nation, because they often give the advice. So someone says, look, I've got an idea to start a new business or a new thing, and we're trying to educate them that a real option for some of these ideas is co-ops. And so we've put a lot of education, not just into the people who are going to be part of the co-op, but the people who are going to give the legal and accounting advice. So that's been a big process and will be ongoing.
Well, Minister, you've heard the pitch there, and we've just come out of the federal budget, and there seems to be a bit of a theme talking to the co-op people, those involved in the finance sector, and you coming from a banking background. There seems to be a need for education, and not just, and you made reference to it about the city people, because I find urban people are really interested about, and we're in the Paddock to Plate Pavilion, they want to know more about it, and co-ops really interested, buy locally, these sort of things, avoiding corporatisation. We've seen the budget. Is there, given the money that's being spent because of COVID, is there room for other projects such as farming cooperative?
Yeah, and look, we put out $3 million, and which 2.5 went to the BCCM. Well spent in terms of making sure there's that education piece about co-ops, because this is about market power and making sure that it gives bargaining power to farmers. And I've had a very long and lengthy and arduous relationship with our supermarkets. In fact, I think very little of our supermarkets. And I think out of the budget, we've also put aside over $5 million towards perishable goods, because I have a real concern that the market power that's there with the supermarkets at the moment means that they're able to pick farmers off. So co-ops are going to play a very important role in that bargaining power, in the shifting it back, in rebalancing it. We're not saying that anyone should have any great power over one another. We're saying all farmers want is a fair price, and unfortunately the power has shifted too far to the big corporates. And so bringing farmers together in co-ops is very important, will be integral in how we move forward. So the $5.4 million that we put out in the budget is around making the next step of being able to evaluate the actual cost of production, and then give us the basis of how do we move forward with premises like co-ops and how do we make them more powerful to give them the bargaining power they need. So this is just squaring the ledger. And that's what farmers want. They just want to square the ledger to have a fair marketplace. They don't want charity. And I think particularly since COVID-19, the provenance of our food and fibre has become even more important to those people that are living in capital cities because they haven't come out. 30, 40 years ago, they all had a cousin, uncle or aunt, and they come out and they'd have a holiday and understand what we did. Now, they live on 600 square metres of dirt with a 6-foot colour-bond fence. And if that's living, good luck to you. But they've now understood where their food and fibre is coming from. There's been an awakening of regional and rural Australia and particularly agriculture. And this is where we have the power now and we've got to push through, but we've got to do that with fact. And that's why the $3 million to go to the cooperative, the BCCM and SCU got 500,000 of that as well locally here to build those projects. I think now we've got to build on that and push co-ops even further to bring farmers together because when they split us, that's when they have the power. When we come together, that's when we reshape it and rebalance it.
Kevin, hearing that, the money that's there for farming cooperative and cooperative farming, the other thing that comes up, and as I say, you're involved, you're a big fan of Norco in particular and the casino food co-op, and there is the growth of the smaller co-ops. We're also seeing, because of COVID and the money that is being made available in the regional areas, is there room for you as a federal member for Page to be saying to someone or a group that comes to you and say, look, there is money available, you can go down that path in the setting up of a co-op?
Look, absolutely, and I really importantly want to acknowledge Melina too and the team at BCCM because they've been around before we started the Farming Together program and they'll be around a lot longer as well as that. So Melina and her team at BCCM have been crucial on this. Their educational process with this is really important, so it's been great working with them. I'm actually chair two of the Parliamentary Friends of Co-ops, of which, again, Melina and the team at BCCM are crucial with, but it's a really important process.
Well, this is the great thing about live television, is that we've been talking about streaming, we've got people involved, they're watching on from Norseman in WA, probably up to your state in Queensland, although they'd be working hard to keep the country going, so they wouldn't be able to sit in front of the TV, would they?
No, look, we've kept the whole show going in Queensland.
But at that point, we've been talking about cooperative farming, and you made reference, and Melina, we'd like you to, there was a line used in television many years ago in the game shows, come on down. So, Melina, you've heard all that. The ministers are pretty keen about what's going on. Yeah. So are you going to twist their arms even harder after they're off air?
Well, look, the support's been fantastic, and if we can continue on the education partnership we've got, it's going to make all the difference. Just having an understanding of cooperatives in government is really what it's about, and I'd just really like to thank you, Kevin, for being the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Co-ops, and thank you very much for supporting cooperative farming as you have, because it's all an education process, and it starts at the government level as well as at the grassroots.
Well, Minister, they're always knocking on your door. That's a fairly impassioned plea, but quite a knowledgeable one about co-ops.
Oh, definitely. And look, this is the thing, is I think there's some real momentum. And the thing is now, how do we build it? We've just had an ACCC report, as I said, around perishable goods. And I think this is the momentum we need to get the facts, the basis and the baseline to move forward, to square the ledger, to make an equitable marketplace, to bring our farmers together, give them bargaining power. And that's what we haven't had, and that's what's been doing us over. So it's time to get that right. And as a government, we're going to move through that. We're not going to take the foot off the accelerator. We're putting more money out, and I think the co-ops will be the next phase of that in terms of moving forward.
Well, just really briefly, you mentioned, is there the room for, you talked about co-ops and supermarkets. Is there the room for the change in legislation to help that?
Yeah, look, let's just say Kevin and I are members of the National Party. We're very strong about the damage that supermarkets have done, and they have. And no one can deny that, and they themselves and the CEOs that I've talked to have acknowledged it, but they haven't done enough to right that wrong, and it's time we put some heat on them. And this is the opportunity about making sure that we leave a legacy, but leaving the structure to make sure that the next CEOs don't do the same thing as what they've done to Australian agriculture as what these have. And this is the thing that representing Western Queensland, that's the thing that drives me, squaring the ledger, making sure my mob get a fair go.
So you're expecting Kevin to turn up and not just knock on your door, but twist your arm because you've been, and you know this area quite well anyway, but are you expecting to hear more from him in his role with co-ops?
Well, it already does, and the $3 million that was rolled out was because of Kevin. That was where I was put on the radar. That's how SCU got 500, BCCM got $2.5 million. Of that $3 million came here because of the advocacy that Kevin put, because he has the same passion about his mob getting done over by the big guy. And that's sort of what the Nats are. We don't like the big guy, we only like the little fella, and we want to look after him.
Gentlemen, I'll leave you to go around and enjoy the optimism here, and no doubt you'll be talking farm machinery and you'll be advising on what they can get hold of because of the budget, and Kevin, then you'll be saying to them, get your hands on it.
And I need to make one other comment. Besides being the home of co-ops, to the Queensland Agriculture Minister, this is also her home of the beef week capital here, Michael, in Casino.
They're just coming out of the Beef Week in Rocky, so I'm not going to say a word with these two standing either side of me. We're at Primex 2021 in the pavilion of the paddock to plate, and where there's been a lot of people taking part, whether they be consumers, producers or machinery dealers, and that's their feeling.
Primex is a big thing, like with the farming, and we usually come every year.
I love coming to this field day in particular. It's got a really good feel to it.
I think a lot of the people who come here, the farmers, like to touch and smell the machinery. They're not totally digital people.
We've come out just have a look around and see what's about.
Well, I've come here looking for stockyards and water tanks.
Machinery and stuff for the farm, because we just need like tractors and quad bikes and all that.
Great to be back, it really is. Last year was such a strange year. I'm just really pleased to be back. Pleased to be talking to people and see happy people too.
Good to be back, isn't it? Back on track, and yeah, it's a nice day for it.
Look, I can't tell you just how important it is that we're back here at Primex.
Yay! Let's go.
And it's great to see it back. All these things are so important to our rural economy and for the rural town.
People really miss that interaction and fellowship that goes along with these big events.
I think it's very important. Very important. Gets the guys out off farm, seeing what the other industries are doing.
Well, everybody's here, and we've just now opened and finished our last bag of sausages, and you know the steak's just ongoing, sandwiches, scones, all of that.
Just that optimistic feeling that is here, and probably reflected wider at the Casino Primex 2021, an optimism and amongst farming, and we're looking at cooperative farming and the need, and it's not just farming, it's not just primary production. So if you've got a question, you can either dial in on 1300 665 174, and that'll be on Monday, and that'll be answered for you. Or we do have, and Melina, as the CEO of BCCM, that's the mental blank here, the Business Council of Cooperatives and sure. And we've got a question from someone, and they go, there used to be a lot of co-ops, which is true. They all went under because they couldn't keep up with the corporates. I'm surprised these co-ops are still around. How have those ones managed to compete?
Yeah, well, the same way that any successful business competes. Good management, good governance, good capitalisation, and good business structuring strategy. So you've got to have the right business case, and you've got to put all those things together, because after all, businesses, corporate, cooperative, small, large, they're run by people. It's the quality of the people, the management, the governance, all put together. Co-op's no different. But if those things, all being equal, are at the top of their game, you've got really high quality business planning, you're going to have a fantastic structure in a cooperative for rewarding the members of the business.
Well, we also heard, when you talk about that, a person like John Segham, who is the chair of the Casino Food Crop, and also a primary producer himself, but he's also involved in the wider, getting other people involved in co-ops, and there's other people like him in the primary sector that are big co-op. So would you be saying to people, go to them, or would you get them to come to someone like you and steer them accordingly?
Well, both, because if you come to the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals, to our cooperative farming program, our one-stop shop, that's www.coopfarming.coop, You'll find the resources, you'll find fantastic free online education modules. You can apply for bursaries until the end of June. You can find case studies, research, but also a fantastic set up a co-op in a box digital technology where you can actually get a constitution for your new business put together online using our tools and resources, the Co-op Builder. At our website, you'll also find the champions of the industry. So this is co-ops by co-ops for co-ops. So we like to really encourage mentoring and peer-to-peer learning across the ag sector from people you've met today online, those ag leaders who've been around in co-ops for a long time. They really want to share their knowledge. So they're the champions that we can put you in touch with.
And talk about being in touch, the Co-op is looking at a major project involving television. Yeah. Tell us about that in about 30 seconds, because there's going to be a taste of it.
A taster, sneak preview to see us out of the end of the live stream. We're really excited. One of the fantastic initiatives through Co-op Farming has been a documentary, and I'm very glad to say that the ABC, the public broadcaster, is going to show this documentary. It's called Fight Back Farmers, June the 15th, 9:30 p.m. Please be watching ABC One to learn more about cooperatives, particularly what the new cooperatives are helping farmers with. And that is screening for the first time in Australia. And you're going to get a sneak preview now.
And because also there is 3 different people involved in cooperatives, and they are all subjects of that operation. And as you say, let's take a look at the actual project that people will be seeing.
Roll the preview.
Australian family farms face the challenge of a lifetime.
It's almost the perfect storm at the moment.
Overnight, our income had reduced by somewhere in the order of 60 to 70%.
Cherished as the backbone of a nation and the heart of communities.
You're up at 4 or 5 in the morning, you finish late. That's okay, that's what we do, we love that.
Small family farms are disappearing.
Heard something on the news and I just thought, what does that actually mean for us?
We went numb. It was pretty devastating.
But they're fighting back.
I thought, I need to step up here.
On land and at sea, farmers are turning back the clock in a modern take.
Corporates come and go. We need to foster the family farm.
On working together.
We're a bunch of farmers one day and then the next we're coming together to form a co-op.
While the stakes are high.
We're all fishermen, but starting a co-op is a whole different ballgame.
The rewards could secure their future and a farming way of life.
We want to make sure we're passing our land to our next generation in a better state than what we inherited in.
It's all about our families and our communities and being sustainable for the future and having something for the generations to come.
Otto loves it. All he wants to do is leave school and be a farmer. I've corrupted him